He shoots myself.
Wait, Aquath! Jagger, come in here!
R.E.P.O, it's a game! Hey everyone, been a while. How's the kids? How's the wife? How's the husband? How's the non-binary, married partner? I'm gonna keep this one short and sweet and tell you that, yes, I am late. I know. I'm sorry. I'm still gonna cover everything you need to know about R.E.P.O despite this though, and this video is gonna be the start of a similar guide series to the one I did for Lethal Company a year back now. Damn. Time flies when you're withering away at college, let me tell you. Anyways, here's the timeline for my uploads for this game. If you want to see any of these guides in the future, feel free to hit subscribe and hit the bell and hit the fucking comment section and all the other stuff YouTubers tell you to do. And let's just jump right into the... R.E.P.O is a new Lethal Company like... Jesus Christ, did I really just use that phrase? Where you and up to 3 friends traverse and explore different zones and different levels to find loot. The goal and primary objective is to secure enough loot in these extraction zones located throughout the map to reach a quota that allows you to leave and continue on or fill up the next extraction zone. It's not that easy though, as enemies are waiting for you around every corner. Some of them are really bad. Like, zoink scoop! Throughout each level, your goal is to survive, thrive, and revive if necessary. The first thing you'll notice when you load in is the UI of the game. What you'll see is a money counter, the amount of extraction zones you have to fill to leave, your total health, your total stamina, and your hotbar with items and tools you can pick up. Unlike Lethal Company games before it, R.E.P.O's loot can't actually be stored in your hotbar, and you must engage in manual labor, carrying each loot item to each extraction zone by hand or by cart, which is actually pretty handy. We love you, cart! There are a total of 3 different maps in the current state of the game that you can randomly travel to each day you're working your ass off for a minimum wage oligarchy. The first map of these is called Swiftbroom Academy, which is a relatively open castle area with large doors, fantasy elements like potion cauldrons and cabinets you can loot all over. The second map is Mechanic Station, which is on the other side of things, a lab-style map with metal doors, a futuristic set of rooms like storage rooms, control rooms, desks and computers, some scaffolding, some cool servers, bunch of other stuff. The last map and the most claustrophobic of the 3, Headman Manor, is a very Amnesia-like type of environment, with living rooms, dining rooms, and bedrooms all over that are pretty typical for a mansion. There's even a garden you can find. Each area has different things that you can open and unlock to find more loot to store in the extraction zones. Loot in the game can vary from small little $500 cups to a massive $22,000 dinosaur skeleton that breaks after hitting it just 3 times. Needless to say, it's easier to play this game with friends, as some loot can be a lot heavier and harder to move around than others. Your weak, puny arms aren't going to lift the goddamn grandfather clock. Just put the fucking socks on already and be done with it. Anyways, I'll quickly segue off of that mess I left in the script there to talk about the most important map that I haven't mentioned yet, which is technically the shop. It's technically a map, I guess. The shop is a map you'll get into between each level that will help you use your funds you gather to equip better stuff and make upgrades. There are 4 different types of items you can get in the shop, which I'll briefly cover in this video and more in depth in later videos. With that in mind, you've got weapons, utilities, upgrades, and carts in the shop. The latter of the 4 I'll talk about first really briefly. If you decide you want more carts to grab loot throughout each map, you can spend either an obscene amount for a normal sized cart, or a cute itty witty bitty amount for an itty bitty witty little cart. Weapons in R.E.P.O are anything that can be primarily used to stun or deal damage to the enemies in the game, some of which have an absolutely gargantuan amount of health. Actually, most of them do. This type of store item includes the inflatable hammer, the sword, the grenade, stuff like that. Utilities in the shop are less used for damaging enemies, as they are used for navigation, loot capability, repairing items, drone upgrades, and some other cool utility-based stuff. The last type of shop item are the player upgrades, which can increase your stamina, speed, strength, jump amount, tumble ability, health, and a couple of other things that are kinda cool. The last thing I'll touch on in this video briefly is some strategy, since I've essentially covered the bare mechanics and stuff already for a beginner's guide. I won't teach anyone min-maxing stuff because ultimately this game's meant to be silly and fun.
Are you really silly?
What the fuck?
Really silly? Yes. Watermelon.
The way you go around looting things in R.E.P.O varies drastically depending on the enemies you have to face, the type of map you're on, and how many friends you're playing with. When you play with more than one person, note that only one person can gain any one player upgrade at a time, and hold up to 3 tools or weapons at any point as well. Because of this, try to evenly split up the amount of upgrades you get as a... yeah, never mind. I forgot I'm talking to a bunch of robots. Hiding under tables, in cabinets, or just crouching in general is usually the most surefire way of avoiding or successfully hiding from the enemies of R.E.P.O, which I'll do a guide on in like a week or so. Keep in mind that you can bash enemies with the items you can carry as well, with some more easily affected by this than others. Always use the map to check where loot is, indicated by the yellow pips, and where your cart is, the blue pip. So the map will actually create a dotted line connecting the ship to the clear. If you're solo, try to pick up as many valuables as you can using the cart, and try to keep track of where every enemy is that you run into. If you're a group, be careful not to clump together too much in a corner you can't escape from. There are some enemies in the game that instantly kill you, and getting cornered by one isn't a fun time. Also, as a solo, try your best to manually drag heavy objects to the extraction zone you're closest to, and as a group, use the women power of multiple people to lift objects up off the ground and either into the cart or all the way back to the extraction zone. Some other cool stuff I've noticed in general for me is combat is typically easier when you are crushing an enemy in between the ground and an object that you're using to hit them with. It tends to deal more damage and overall is a faster way of dealing a finishing blow than if you were to just hit them over and over again with the object normally. In terms of loot, I'll do an entire video later, but just to briefly touch on it, the smaller the loot, the easier it is to transport as a good rule of thumb, and the less valuable it is, even though some small loot is actually really expensive, and typically the bigger it is, the harder it is to move and the more valuable it is. So just know that playing with a team is always easier than playing solo, as a result of this, and strength upgrades are your best friend. The last thing I'll touch on as a good rule of thumb is that some enemies are line of sight based, some enemies are hearing based, and overall it's just kind of a mess to keep track of all of it without going over in an entire video in of its own. So as a good rule of thumb, just be stealthy, try not to talk too much to teammates when you know that there's an enemy that can listen to sound, and just have fun. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had to talk about today for this video. I know it was a short one, but I'll cover each of the game's individual parts, such as the loot, enemies, upgrade mechanics, and some other stuff, in future videos. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and shout out to everyone over at Patreon and Discord for supporting my video making endeavors, even though I'm going through the last few terms of college before I graduate and I've been super busy. Your support really means the world. You can join my Patreon and Discord down below in the description if you want to, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the end.